The nation is mourning the deaths of several women and girls who were murdered by men.
Holding the steak knife that he had been using, he jumped to his feet and rushed at me.
That night when I put in my statement, one of the officers at the police station says, "Oh, you know what? We don't have the time for this."
We know the names of Uyinene Mkhechana, Leandre Jechels, Janika Mallo, Ayaka Gianni, and her 3 little siblings. But we also grieve with many others who have died at the hands of men.
There was physical abuse, verbal abuse, and emotional abuse.
Violence against women has become more than a national crisis. It is a crime against our common humanity.
South Africa's economic inequality affects all aspects of women's lives. And for victims of gender-based violence, this often means that killing or maiming an abusive partner in self-defense would result in imprisonment. Gender-based violence affects women from all walks of life. However, poor working-class women are less likely to obtain justice than their richer counterparts, even in the most clear-cut cases. This is Him or Me, a podcast series on the experiences of women who have faced abuse and their experiences with the South African criminal justice system. I am your host, Lele Tutonisi. Prisoners from across the country's 243 prisons write to Wits Justice Project daily. The Wits Justice Project reviews each letter received and sorts between different types of requests and complaints. These letters are filed according to several categories such as prison time, type of legal representation, and in the case of alleged wrongful convictions, the Wits Justice Project identifies any potentially exonerating circumstances or failures in due procedure. Most of these letters come from incarcerated men because men make up the majority of the prison population. But women write to us too, at times to report poor prison conditions or violations of their rights. At times, women write to us because they were sentenced for killing in self-defense. A common denominator among most of these cases is the inability to pay for private legal representation. In these cases, the accused person is assigned a state-appointed lawyer to represent them during proceedings and their trial. But considering that the majority of South Africans cannot afford basic needs, this means that most cannot afford to pay a lawyer to represent them should they ever need to. Senior multimedia journalist at the Wits Justice Project, Sumeya Gasa, compiled this report.
According to Stats SA, more women than men live in abject poverty. These women have to rely on state resources for healthcare, safety and security, and justice. However, as is the case with most state-supplied services, the departments servicing the majority of poor South Africans are stretched thin and severely under-resourced. Naturally, this compromises the quality of service offered to poor and working-class South Africans. Over the years, the Wits Justice Project labored through each and every letter received. We found the following. Prisoners who write to us more often than not report that they were assigned a lawyer by the state. In many instances, state-assigned lawyers advise their clients to plead guilty to the charges leveled against them, and often without dedicating much time to hearing their client's case. In fact, on several occasions when the Wits Justice Project attended court hearings, the accused persons stated that they had never met or spoken to the lawyers representing them on that day. The same applies to women who kill in self-defense or in reasonable anticipation of an imminent attack.
In one case reported on by the Wits Justice Project, a woman killed her abusive partner without even realizing she had done so. We will call her Nolizwe and her partner, Thabo. All had been going well between the couple until Nolizwe's son drowned during an epileptic fit. Soon after this tragic incident, Thabo's behavior changed. He often accused Nolizwe of infidelity and assaulted her during spontaneous, violent, drunken outbursts. She sought medical attention and reported the assaults to the police, but they never investigated the case. On one evening, he returned home drunk and belligerent. Nolizwe had been asleep in bed. She was barely dressed, and as he meted out his attack on her, she attempted to escape, but he blocked the doorway leading out of their home. He threatened to kill her. Afraid, Nolizwe grabbed a knife to protect herself. Thabo tried to wrestle it away from her. They struggled in the dark living room, but Thabo eventually moved away and Nolizwe ran out into the street, still naked. She continued to run, thinking Thabo was coming after her, but eventually went back when she thought it was safe to do so. She found Thabo lying in a pool of blood and immediately called for an ambulance and the police, but Thabo did not survive. Nolizwe was arrested immediately. During her trial, her legal aid lawyer did not argue self-defense, even though Nolizwe's case was a clear one.
In a case like that of Nolizwe, the lawyer has to first show that Nolizwe has tried to seek assistance before proceeding to argue self-defense. And this was the case with Nolizwe. She had medical records proving she had been subjected to abuse on several occasions. She also had sought assistance from the police who failed to investigate or follow up on her complaints. So that means the first part of the self-defense argument checks out. The lawyer would then have to explain that Thabo had threatened to kill Nolizwe and his attack proved the threat real and deadly. But the lawyer failed to argue self-defense and as a result earned Nolizwe a sentence of 10 years imprisonment.
The Legal Aid South Africa's 2019-2020 annual report reads as follows. The court coverage model did have to be tweaked somewhat in response to challenges brought about by financial constraints. We had to assess the demand for legal services from each court to ensure that practitioner resources were fully utilized, which at times resulted in practitioners having to take on additional work. According to the report, Legal Aid South Africa recruited just over 2,500 staff members nationally. Of this figure, 63% were criminal legal staff, with the rest being support staff, civil legal staff, and paralegals. However, in the same year, the organization delivered over 402,000 legal services in new legal aid matters. Most of these were criminal matters. Comparing the number of services to the number of staff, it is clear that the organization's practitioners have to take on more work than is advisable. This in turn compromises the quality of services provided by the practitioners. And as South Africa's economic inequality prevails, so does unequal access to justice. And for women like Nolizwe, it means paying for crimes committed against them with prison time that in itself comes with additional trauma. This has been Him or Me, a podcast series on the experiences of women who have faced abuse and their experiences with the South African criminal justice system. I am your host, Lele Tutonisi. The Wits Justice Project investigates human rights abuses and miscarriages of justice related to the criminal justice system. You can get in touch with us by visiting our website at www.witsjusticeproject.co.za or Wits Justice Project on Facebook and on Twitter.